Okay, so let's see what week we are in right now. Content, course outline. No, that's not the one. This is the second one here. Today is November 28th. Wow. I was just waiting for September to roll in, and look at that. It's almost the end of the term. So, November 28th, it's the week 13 till December 2nd. Okay. So, the only two topics that we have to cover is the confined space, which we're going to finish today. And next week we'll tackle the arc flash topic, and we should be done for the term. One thing that I already put it in the announcements, but let's just see what I did here. FOL contents displayed. This is how I titled this. I noticed that FOL doesn't display all the content in one shot. For example, it looks like this 9-week is the last one displayed, but there's that button here. I don't know why FOL doesn't display the whole thing. Why do you need to press the button? But you know what? Let's just accept the fact that this, okay, it is this way. So here is an example. Content, make myself look like a student. So content and student items, and let's go to see the lectures. All right. So I'm just gonna press here. You can have the option of pressing here, which is going to expand on this screen. But if you press here, it gives you a little bit more clear. There's a little tiny bit of a subtle difference. But if you just keep going down with this, and look, week 9, and that looks like it's the last item. No, it is not. There is that button that says read more. Click that, and there will be 2 more topics that are going to be displayed. By the same token, we're gonna safety ladders, scaffolds. Okay, you know what? Let me just before I start, just bear with me because I just want to make that thing available for you. 2022 fall, 1051. Lectures and confined space. Wait a sec. We just go all the way down here, and this is confined space. Oh yeah, I can't put it in because I'm displaying as a student. Excuse me. Content. Student items, lectures. You see, I go all the way down, go press that one more thing here, read more. Confined space, that's the one. We're gonna finish this today, and it is available for you to see and download. Okay, cool. All right, let's see what we have. People are still rolling in. Now we have 13 people, including me, 14. Okay, I'm not people. All right, so that's the one thing I noticed that. Do we have anything yet? No, not yet. Well, I already marked those some of the assignments. Please follow the instructions. Please do not send me any chicken scratch things because you're going to be marked accordingly. And if I could please, if I may suggest kindly, to read the instructions, watch the video that I'm explaining how things need to be done, and just follow that. All right, that one last page on that assignment, and that is the very last thing that I have to say on the posted lecture notes is look at what you've done and ask yourself an honest, objective question. If somebody did that type of work for you, if you were that person's boss, would you pay that person for this work? And you don't have to answer that to me. I'll just give you the marks. but you know, it's a, well, I would say it's a serious kind of a it's like playing a game, but playing it seriously, because well, there's that philosophy that the whole life treat it as a game, but treat it extremely seriously, you'll be fine. Well, that's about it as far as philosophy that you're going to get from me today. All right. Okay, cool. I think I said cool twice, now 3 times. Let us continue with the, there you go. Let us continue with the stuff that we have to continue. The stuff, here's the stuff. And last time it did not let me go full screen. Let's see if he's going to let me do it now. Still doesn't let me do it. Wow. Let's go view, full screen mode. And it still doesn't let me do it. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay. Anyways, you're going to see the whole paraphernalia around it. That's okay. So we're talking about the some of the characteristics of the confined space. And this is the continuing of whatever we did last time. This is the second half of it. Plus, you're going to have that posted lecture note. The posted lecture notes available for you already in all one shot. Okay, so in confined space, you could encounter something that's called inadequate illumination, which is basically not enough light. So adequate illumination, enough light, should be provided where lighting is limited. Needless to say, our eyesight is pretty much the dominant sense that we have. And if we don't see, we might have certain challenges of maneuvering around certain type of spaces. And if it's a confined space, then of course that would present a certain type of a hazard. All right. Now, in some cases, explosion-proof lighting might be necessary. Right? What's explosion-proof lighting? Well, it's the light that doesn't explode. No, it's not the light. Well, still, some of the electrical systems can explode, which we're going to talk about next time we see each other, which is the arc flash topic. But that's not what it's meant by here. It is meant that in certain cases there could be some fumes that could be, well, ignitable. It could act as explosives. It could act as propellants. Right? So explosion-proof lighting is a lighting or any electrical system or any system that is installed in a way that any kind of sparking that could cause ignition is eliminated. And somebody has the microphone turned on. So I'm beginning to hear, yeah, all right. Mute your microphones, please. There you go, thank you. Now, so what happens is that when there's a switch and the switch makes action, which means switches things on and switching things off. At the time of contact, there could be a spark provided because the electricity doesn't flow through that point. And all of a sudden it begins to flow. And at the moment of closure, a spark can be produced. And pretty much, I would say 99.9%, 0.9999%, all the household lighting and all that stuff, they do on contact, they produce the spark. Sometimes the spark could be a little bit greater, and sometimes the spark could be some sort of like, it might seem insignificant to us, but if the room is filled with explosive gases, and it could be anything, that spark could ignite the whole thing, and you'll be seeing things from above. So explosion-proof lighting, in some cases, might be necessary in order to make things safe. Explosion-proof lighting also is installed in certain type of scenarios. Like, for example, in certain areas where there is paint booths or spray booths, right? The paint, the fumes from the paint, certain types of paints, when the cars are being painted, sprayed, or whatever else, then that could be ignitable. So the lighting should be installed that is explosion proof. Years ago, when I was in business of my own, I was bidding on a contract to install a security alarm in one of the oil changing places, and any kind of electronic devices had to be explosion proof there. So I had to put some extra price on getting some extra equipment in order to enclose sensors, enclose keypads, enclose whatever else. That was years ago. I don't remember exactly the equipment that I used, but because it was probably 15 years ago. But it had to be done. So it was the oil changing place. Some of the toxic fumes could go in the floor underneath when the person does your oil change, and some of the oils or any kind of things from the car, gas fumes, could travel down if they're heavier than air. And then if you turn on the light there, boom, right? Also, if you suspect or if you have a gas leak in your house, don't turn the lights on and off, because the gas could be present in the air, and that little tiny spark could be enough to ignite the whole thing. And I think it was a year ago or a couple of years ago, we had a little bit of well, not a little bit, but there was a bad news in London, where we are here, that the whole house, the roof was blown from the top of the house and landed on top of the house that was in the neighborhood. Okay, so things are serious. So that's what's as far as explosion proof lighting. So now you know, right? You can certainly investigate further what that means. All right, let's see here, the next slide. Some confined spaces can contain mixing or crashing mechanisms. Which type of hazard would that be? That would be configuration, right? Okay, let's read this again. Some confined spaces can contain mixing or crashing mechanisms or other hazards that can be turned on and injure workers. So there could be something on a timer. There could be something that reacts to certain type of things. So just have to make sure that none of that will happen while the work is being done in that type of confined space. So this would be, well, this to me looks like a some sort of a garbage disposal, waste disposal crushing container, maybe, right? And when it could be manually turned on or could be automatic, I don't know these things, right? But it looks like something can crash you while you're there, right? So what do we have here? Use lockouts, lockout or tag out on all hazardous items. Same thing as we use the lockouts and tag out. So we like, for example, if we're working on some sort of electrical circuit, we're going to make sure that the circuit is turned off. So we go to this to the electrical panel, we open that, we turn off that circuit breaker for that circuit, and we put a lock on that circuit breaker so nobody by accident turns that thing on while we're working on it. So same thing here. It's mechanical equipment, electrical equipment, whatnot. You don't want any surprises when you are while you're inside. Okay, so that's basically what that means, right? Then we go to the attendants. So whenever the work is being done inside within a confined space, remember we mentioned before that we need the person to do the work, of course, and then that person is not being left alone. You need an attendant to be there, and it's the law. You need to have an attendant while somebody's working in a confined space. And what are the duties of the attendants? The attendant is supposed to know the hazards. It's not just somebody say, hey, what are you doing now? I was going to do lunch. Well, can you just go watch this person for 10 minutes? Make sure nothing happens. Okay, you can't just have that, make sure nothing happens. That person should be very familiar, should be familiar with the hazards that are present. It should be something that's called a competent person when it comes to dealing with this particular situation, right? So knowing the hazards is one of the duties of the attendants. What are hazards? Hazards are the dangers that can hurt you, right? Situations or equipment or whatever can hurt you is a hazard. and how much of a hazard there is it a high risk or low risk of that happening, then we assess that with the risks. But the person who's attending you, which is the person who doesn't go in with you, right? The person just stays outside of the confined space, and that person never goes in. Okay? Then what else? Maintains an accurate count of entrants. Well, that's obvious, right? 3 people go in, 2 people came out. Wow. Was it 3 people or was it 2 people? Was that person with a dog? No, that could be maintained an accurate count of the entrants. So when the work is done, you need to know that how many people came in, same amount of people came out there, right? Not much more explanation needed for this, I suppose. The attendant remains outside the permit space until relieved by another attendant, or until the work is done and the whole thing is wrapped up. Right? And the person never goes in, never goes inside. Because if there is something that is going to happen, like for example, toxic fumes that are going to overwhelm, lack of oxygen or something that is going to happen, if that person goes in, the same thing can happen to the attendant. And then there are 2 people that are down and still there's no one to call help. So the attendant remains outside. So things actually can be done. The attendant maintains regular communication with the entrance. Entrance will be the people who enter the confined space. So maintains regular communications. I go back to that reality show, I think it was called Gold Rush, when they were looking for gold. And there was one particular case that they had a particular situation that they had somebody going underneath the ocean, underwater with diving with the diver's suit, and there was a communication. You could tell that the person who was on top in the boat would constantly talk to the person who was under the water. It was not for entertainment. It was not for the show. It had to be there. It had to be done. And the person who is on top, the attendant, would pretty much make sure that they will pay attention to how the person is behaving. Do they start talking nonsense? Do they start mumbling or something like that? And then based on that, you could just assess the situation if things are okay or some safety mechanisms should be triggered, as I see procedures, right? Or risky procedures, right? Monitors the condition inside and outside the permit space. So the person who's in that confined space, they could be busy doing the work, and some of the work can be intense. They might be uncomfortable, not as comfortable as the person outside, because wearing some kind of a space suit or whatnot, that adds to the not space suit, but you know what I mean, the PPE. That adds to you can only some of the clothing that you have to wear and some of the PPE. You can only work in with that thing for so long before you just have to take it off and take a deep breath, or what, just get out of there, right? So the person they might not be as attentive to monitoring constantly the conditions of the room because they're doing the job. So the attendant is supposed to maintain, monitor the conditions inside the room. If something changes, they're supposed to react, and how they're supposed to react, depends on the situation, and it all should be spelled out in the permit documentation. Okay? Now, by saying that, as I said during the 8 o'clock class, there is a service that it's a public service that some you might want to consider if if this is something that appeals to you. It's a confined space rescue service, or whatever the exact name of it is. Some years ago, I used to work with a person who was participating in that program. What it was basically is the certain people who sign up for that, and they, based on the whatever criteria they have to meet, they're accepted to do that thing. It's basically it's being on call. So you, quite often they just go just like the fire people, right? They just go in to certain building or room, or just go to work, and they are on duty in case some confined space rescue is needed, right? And sometimes you just go in there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, nothing happens, but you still have to be there as part of your job and you get paid for it, right? And then if something happens, then boom, all the emergency procedures are being triggered. Where to find that job opportunity? Right now, I cannot tell you. You might want to ask some of the local authorities. Fire department would be the first thing I would, because those guys work together with the other guys. But when I say that, please don't call 911 and ask for that kind of a job opportunity. 911 is for emergencies, right? So find some discreet way of non-intrusive way of asking for that. I just want to let you know that something like that exists, right? Since we're talking about confined space. All right, next slide. Duties of an attendant. All right, so we're continuing that. Attendant would summon rescue services when needed. Right? That's one of the prime jobs of the attendant, not just be there and cash the paycheck. And attendant ensures that unauthorized personnel do not enter the permit space. So they make sure that whoever is not supposed to be there, they don't go in. None shall pass. Remember that Monty Python movie? It's not the title, but I forgot what the title was. But there was that night in the woods, so none shall pass. That's pretty much the duty of the attendant. Performs non-entry rescues. That's the second time it's mentioned. You see here, maintains, remains outside the permit, and here that goes together, performs non-entry rescues. That's the attendant. That is part of that job that is being done on the confined space or in the confined space. Excuse me. And I just explained the reason during the slide before. When something happens, you don't know whether it's something that can overwhelm you as well if you're the attendant and then there's two people down and no one to call for help. All right, so performs no other duties that might interfere with the primary duty to monitor and protect the entrance. You got one job, right? Do it right. All right, so performs no other duties. So that person can't be assigned, oh, while you're there and they're working, why don't you go over the last month's sales and maybe you can find out something about that. No, that person should concentrate totally on this job that is being done at hand right now. It's a serious thing. Okay, next slide. If it is possible for a worker to be overcome by sudden change in atmospheric conditions. Remember when we talk about just because yeah, that was the movie. Yeah, Monty Python Quest for the Holy Grail. That was it. None shall pass. Right, the duty at the attendant. No, he wasn't attendant. He was whoever he was. Okay, so yeah, thank you. Thank you, Marty. Okay, so it is possible for a worker to be overcome by the sudden change in atmospheric conditions. So remember what we mentioned before, if just because the air to breathe is okay before the entrance to the confined space, so the space took place, doesn't mean it's not going to change. So the duty of the attendant the duty of the attendant the duty of the attendant is to constantly monitor the situation. So if it is possible that the change is so sudden that it just overwhelms whoever is there suddenly, and then boom, their lights out, they're passed out, they faint. So that's why the attendant should not do anything else, like go over the last month's sales records or something like that. Now, so ensure that a rescue procedure is in place in case an entrant needs to be removed from a confined space. And notice that this whole PPE is designed in this particular space. And sometimes it is required to do that. That this whole thing is designed that in case something like that happens, the removal of the worker is immediate. Right? There's no any okay, what should we do? Let's look at the manual. Now, in this case, this particular case, it's just okay, something happened, let's pull him out. Right? Additional concerns when it comes to the when it comes to the working with confined space. A noise can be concerned depending on the type of a room that you're working in. It could be the noise made by the equipment. It could be the noise by the way the space is constructed. Metal, steel, tanks, they're big ones. If something is bumped into it or whatnot, or there could be some vibrations, the noise is just amplified due to the acoustics of the space, and you can get your hearing damaged. And remember, when you get your hearing, when your hearing goes down, it is not reversible. Right? So quite often you're going to see in some of the big production halls, you're going to have dispensers, just like the bubble gum dispensers. But there's no bubble gum there, and you don't put quarter in it or a dollar or two. There are those foam earplugs, and whoever is working there, they're going to, you can just grab any amount of those. When the ones that you have, they go bad, whatever, throw them out, get new ones. That's for the noise in the production halls, which is not considered a confined space because it's meant for continuous occupancy. But that is one of the ways to protect your hearing, but it's not a one fit all situation. I just want to point this out to you, is that those foam earplugs, they might just protect you from some of the higher frequencies, mid and high frequencies that enter through your ear, through that opening in your ears, right? But also what happens is that I always forget to find out that, but if you touch behind your ear, there is that hard bone that you have there, right behind your ear. That bone can transfer sound as well towards your inner ear. So if there are certain thumps or low frequency noise happening, then that you can go through that bone. It's going past it. It's going to go through the inner ear. So the best way to protect your ears is to have those earmuffs, those ear things, right? Just like the headphones, but because it covers your whole ear in and outside, right? And sometimes double. People put in the ear the phone plugs, and on top of that. So this is one of those things. Your hearing gets damaged, you don't get it back. What else could be other concerns? Could be slippery or wet surfaces. Slippery or wet surfaces increased they increase the risk of falls and electrical shock. Wet surfaces, wetness can conduct electricity. Water can conduct electricity. Some other liquids can conduct electricity. Be mindful of that. And you can simply slip and fall. How high do you have to be to have the possibility of injury when you fall down? You can be sitting in the chair and fall in a certain way. You could be sitting on the ground and fall a certain way and injure yourself. So there's no lower limit for that. Personal protective equipment. All right, sometimes I might need some more. Sometimes you need certain type of equipment, sometimes you don't. It depends on the situation. More common PPE such as hard hats, Hard-toed boots. Notice that I didn't say steel-toed boots because carbon fiber, as long as there's a tag, so instead of steel toes, they're carbon fiber protectors there instead of steel. Those boots are approved by the industry and they are tagged with a green tag or whatever else tag needs to be. As long as you have the tag, that's it. And if the boot is designed, the type of protection you get for the type of job that you're doing, that's the main thing. Safety glasses, face shields, sometimes you need the face shields, gloves, and overalls must be worn when needed, all right? And the heat could also be a concern. I had a situation, no, it was not me, but well, my friends, when they were doing work, they were trying to pull some wires, install some wiring in the ceiling space at the residential, at the house. It was a house, it was a residential installation. And it was in the middle of summer. Don't go into the sitting space in the middle of the summer, in the middle of the day. That person had to be pulled out and it didn't take long. It just took less than a minute. And the person was out, light, lights out. Right? And it's a good thing that somebody was there to pull him out. If it was just, if you just went there all by yourself, you would pass out and there would be no one would know that you're there. It doesn't take much. So when it comes to installing wires, or I'm trying to give you some examples that would have to do that would be common to certain type of work that we are getting you for, and installing wires is one of the things. So when it comes to wiring installation in hot area like that, hot spaces like this, sometimes what people do is they just go like 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning before the sun comes out, so the sitting space has a chance to cool down overnight, and then you just do the work that needs to be done quickly, and it is going to be confined space, and then you get out before the sun comes out and the roof heats up to the point that it is not survivable to be there. All right. Applied standards. Well, here's the Ontario regulations about confined space. Let's see, just skim through that. Requirements. Before any worker enters the confined space or begins related work with respect to the confined space, the lead employer, or in case of a project, the constructor, shall prepare a coordination document. So everything should be documented. You can't just say, okay, yeah, you know what to do? Yeah, I know what to do. Be careful out there. It's not one of those, right? Everything is documented. There's proper procedures and things have to be in writing. So to prepare a coordination document to ensure that the duties imposed on the employers by section, and there's more sections here, performed in a way that protects the health and safety of all workers who perform the work in the confined space or related work with respect to confined space. All right, so here's kind of like a lawyer's reading. Excuse me, just get a sip of coffee here. All right, I can talk for 17 more hours now. Good. All right, so that means basically what this is here is that it is showing you that things are official. It's not a suggestion. It's not can you do this? It's not asking. It's telling. Okay, if you work in a confined space, things have to be done. On top of that, there will be some official training that you have to complete before anybody even lets you work in a space that might have certain type of hazards that are characteristic to confined space. But when you get yourself a job or a certain type of job that requires some of the documents, you will be presented with that training by your boss. By, I hate the word boss, by your leader, right? Employer, your employer. Now, applicable standards, there's more regulations here. Program 510 includes the confined space that if a worker includes a confined space that if a workplace includes a confined space that workers may enter to perform work, the employer shall ensure that a written program for the confined space is developed and maintained in accordance with this regulation, and there's some more. So basically this, and here you can see some numbers and rules and regulations, and you can see the region Ontario regulation. So that means that things are official, right? And am I going to ask you to remember this, and am I going to give it on a test? No, because some of the rules can be amended, some of the rules can be changed, so you gotta make sure that you're on top of whatever the rules and regulations are at the time that you work and at the place that you have to perform the work. And there's things a little bit more complicated. So competency is the word. So you can't just let somebody, give somebody do the job. So, okay, you're doing anything today? I was going to do that, this and that, and the other thing. Oh, no, okay, stop that. I have a confined space work for you to do. Can you set the procedure up? No, it doesn't work that way. People have to be trained. And if when they are trained, you get presented with pretty much um, current rules and regulations. Ontario, there's more here. Assessment. Before any worker enters a confined space, the employer shall ensure that an adequate assessment of the hazards, so related to confinement, has been carried out. So things have been assessed properly by a competent person. Competent person means that the person was trained and they know what they're doing because they got trained on that, and they have demonstrated their competency within the topic. Plan. All right. Before any worker enters a confined space, the employer shall ensure that an adequate written plan, including the procedures for the control of hazards identified in the assessment, has been developed. What has been developed? A plan, including procedures for control of the hazards. The plan to control the hazards has been developed. Got to make sure. And implemented by a competent person for the confined space. Here's the key to one of the keys to the whole thing. A competent person, a person who's been trained and approved to do this type of job. Right? What is your employer responsible for when it comes to working within confined space? Your employer is responsible for providing atmospheric testing equipment. The employer is responsible, if necessary, providing ventilation equipment and or respiratory protection. That's the duties of your employer. Your employer should provide the training that you need to do the job. So what does it say? Providing and training on confined space permits and written program. Excuse me. And your employer is responsible for developing and training on emergency action and rescue plans. So that's the employer's duties. And responding to and correcting hazards pointed out by you, which would be the worker, if you are the worker, right? If you're the employer, then there you go. So if somebody points out, look, there's some kind of a hazard there that maybe we should address that because it's dangerous, whatever. Your employer cannot ignore that. They should address that. Listen to you. Now, you also have responsibilities if you are the worker. So the employer might has to give you the atmospheric testing equipment to check the air and the ventilation, but your duty is to use it, right? So you should use that thing to test the atmosphere prior to entry and periodically monitor the atmosphere for possible changes. Following permit procedures, providing training. So the employer has to train you. They have to train you. Well, all the training that you have you have to follow the procedures that you were given. You're responsible to correct the hazards if you are able to do that. Right? It's not like one of those not my job things, right? If you see something that is a hazard, you're supposed to correct that if it is possible for you to do that. If not, then other things, depending on the situation, get out and make sure people know about it. Your employer knows about it, right? But if you see something small that can, something in the way that somebody can slip on, you pick it up from the floor and put it somewhere else. That type of thing. Right? Just an example. And you're responsible. If you see some hazards, you should report that. You can just ignore it, walk by. Okay, now I know. Who cares about the next person who's going to walk here after me? Let them worry about it. Not like that. All right. So you're supposed to report to your supervisor the hazards that you are unable to correct. And look at 31 out of 32. We're almost to the last slide here. Always remember. Okay, let's see what we have to remember. We have to test the atmosphere prior to entry and periodically, which means test the air before you enter, and once you're there, continue testing for possible sudden changes or possible changes. Never enter a confined space if the atmospheric conditions are not suitable. Well, if you can't breathe in there, if you know that you won't be able to breathe, why would you go there? Right? But you have to remember that. Ensure the attendant is outside the confined space at all times. The attendant should be there. Well, I don't need to elaborate on that. And follow your company's confined space permit, which means the permit that is written, the whole documentation that's prepared, that has all the risk assessment or the hazard assessment, the risks associated with that, the plan that that specifies what job needs to be done, exactly how long it's going to take, or approximately, and all the safety procedures. We got to follow them. Right? All right. So this is the last slide. There's no more slides. Okay. It's just like the Matrix. I just keep going in circles now. Right. That's the second movie I mentioned. That which part of was it? Was Matrix 1, Matrix 2, or Matrix 3 when he was stuck in the train station? Okay. All right. I'm just an email away, and if you, of course, you're always welcome to talk to me during the labs, during the lectures here. We're almost done, guys. I will see you next term. Well, not yet. We still have some couple lessons, but I'm just getting you ready for seeing me next term for the network cabling course. Cool. That's it. It's like quarter-2. I think this is 5 or 6 minutes longer than the 8 o'clock class. Maybe I talked slower, or did I talk more? Now I'm talking nonsense. Okay. Thank you. Have a good one. And as always, remember, what is it, kids? It's almost Friday. There you go. It's almost Friday. Have a good one, guys. Thank you. I guess I taught you something this term. Bye.